record on this computer. There we go. Yep, you see the recording thing now. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So for those of you who are just tuning in, I don't want to go much too into it. Here we go. So as we get into chapter 2, again, we're talking about identity. We're talking about where your identity comes from. And the punchline is your identity is heavily influenced by your culture. All right. So culture is something that I want to clarify really quickly. When I talk about culture is, it's all encompassing. It's inescapable. It's all around you. It does not necessarily mean ethnicity. Ethnicity influences your culture, but that's not what we're talking about. Ethnicity for me, I'm Irish, well, barely Irish. I'm mostly Polish, cheekbones, Italian, Lithuanian, and Welsh, right? Irish, Italian, Polish, Lithuanian, and Welsh. So those are my ethnicities. That's where my family comes from. Depending on who you are, you're going to have different ethnicities. And yes, those influence your culture as a person. But when we talk about culture, that's not what we're referring to. Okay. Culture is a little bit more broad than that and more encompassing than that. This is a really, really good definition of culture that I like to use. I got this from a friend who is a cross-cultural specialist. And so this is something that I do think that you should hold on to and remember. All right. So first of all, culture is shared, learned, and symbolic. Okay. It's a system that is shared, learned, and symbolic. And those 3 words I'm really going to hammer home. It has to do with your values. It has to do with your beliefs. It has to do with your attitudes. And then it has an impact on your behavior and the way you think. So let's talk about shared. All right. First of all, consider the different cultures that you belong to. Consider the different layers that make up who you are as a person. And there's going to be a lot of similarities. For example, this class, and I'm assuming here, correct me if I'm wrong, this class, it appears to me that everyone identifies as female. All right. And that being the case, and I'm making an assumption, I realize that, but where most everyone in this class appears to be female, there is a huge culture surrounding just that female experience, right? You could talk about women as they relate to men. You can talk about women as they relate to children or families or responsibilities, jokes that we share, complaints that we share, frustrations that we share, inequities that we share. And that's something, as a culture, the culture of women, it's something that's shared and is consistent with other people within that culture. Okay. So like I said, my family is Polish. Sweeter is Polish. And that's another shared experience. People who are Polish, there's food that they share. There's traditions that they share. There's language that they share. Polish pottery, stuff like that, that's shared. And so you'll see that there's a lot of similarities across cultures. The next keyword is learned. Okay. There are things that you were taught. For most of us, it's going to come from our family, like when we were young children, but there are things that we were taught that make up who we are. Marzine, if I can pick on you for a minute, you were mentioning at the beginning of class, not liking dresses or skirts of a certain length. And that's probably something that came from a family experience or religious experience. And that's something that was taught to you. You want to add to that? Go for it.
Yeah, this is like reminding me of my other class, like nature versus nurture, a lot, because this is something like we definitely have just talked about. So yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely nature versus nurture. But to add on, yes, I can't stand skirts thanks to the Christian upbringing and how they follow like those skirtsy things. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. And then finally, the last piece is it's symbolic. It means something. Okay. Everything that you do, everything that you identify with, it means something to you. All right. So an example that I like to give all the time is, because I have a slight caffeine problem. walk into your favorite coffee shop, and stop me if I use this example last week, because I suspect I did. Walk into your favorite coffee shop. All right, whether it's Starbucks, Dunkin', something local, whatever. Stand in line, right? You've got your order in mind, you know what you want, and someone walks in and cuts in front of you. How do you react? And I already see faces. How do you react to that?
Hello, hi, you okay? Everything okay? Line starts back there.
Mm-hmm. What else?
It really just depends on the day and the mood. To be honest, some days I'll just be like, oh, whatever. And then other days I'll be like, you need to move. Excuse me, the line is back there. Really, it just really depends on the day and how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I think it also it depends on the intent in which they do it. If, like, you know, some people just cut in front. Like, if you can tell that they're cutting in front of you, just don't care. Or if it's just an honest mistake, then it's dealt with differently. So I guess the intent matters.
I was gonna say the same thing. It all depends on the day, the mood, because you'll have the day where it's like, okay, whatever, I'm not in the mood, and there'll be days where, excuse me, like, I've been waiting long enough. I'm not gonna, it
What mood are you in? Absolutely. Consider this: it's someone your age or younger who does it. How do you feel now?
Depends if I prayed or not that morning. Did I do my praise and worship? If I did not, then I might praise and worship right there in front of them. They might just move on their own. I don't know. All
right.
For me, if it's you said the age, if it's someone my age, like, honestly, you need to move your butt back over there. But if it's like, if it's a child, then it's like, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna stand there and argue with a child.
Oh, you better than me, child. Because if a child cut me, I'm like, excuse me, hi, where's your mother? Where's your mother or your father? You need to move.
Your mother or your father?
Well, a 7-year-old is one thing, right? A 15-year-old is a different thing.
See, a 15-year-old, you have enough knowledge to know, like, that's disrespectful.
You know better.
Like, then they'll be like, okay.
And let me jump on that for a second. You just said that's disrespectful, okay? That's that symbolic piece. And I forgot to ask you that before. How do you feel about this person who has jumped in front of you in line? They're rude, they're ignorant, you know, they're disrespectful, whatever it is. There's that symbolic piece right there. Okay. Someone didn't raise you right, because I know that when I walk into line, and when I walk into a place and I stand in line, this is my place in line, and I don't cut anyone else off, and I don't let anyone, you know, cut in front of me or behind me or whatever. Right? And Marzine is totally agreeing with me. Go ahead, Amber.
Can I share something?
Please.
This reminds me of when I was shopping once, and I was shopping on this rack, and this younger girl comes right next to me and like touches like the same dresses I was looking at, and I was like a little like annoyed, but I wasn't gonna say anything to her because I was like, maybe, well, I don't think her intent is to piss me off. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
See, this is why the Lord had me meeting you right now, Amber. I'm happy to teach you the rules right about now. Okay.
But this is all highly cultural, right? I asked you before if it was someone who is your age or younger, how you'd react. Imagine now that it's like this old, I'm just gonna say lady, you know, like a grandmotherly type. She's in her 80s. She's kind of, you know, she looks like she's not doing well, and she cuts in front of you.
I'm gonna let it go because I have a grandmother. I'm gonna let it go because I have a grandma, and I would want someone to show her that respect. Yeah. And she might be, like you said, not there. You know. I would give that respect, but honestly, it would all depend. If I'm in line early in the morning trying to get my coffee, then we'll have a coffee.
Her time is limited. She needs that coffee fast.
Time is limited.
In the morning, I need my coffee. Like, I stop seeing that right there, it'll be like, oh, hell no. Like, no, I need this coffee. I need my brains to, no.
I might not feel like Elsa and let it go. I don't know. It depends. She might, I won't be disrespectful because I was taught another whole thing about this. I was taught to respect my elders. That's one. And then secondly, to honor them because you want to live long. So if you want to live long, you have to respect them. So I would respectfully say, hi. And then depending on her response, exactly.
Yep.
Now, if she doesn't sound like, or, you know, she's all the way there, I'll let her stay there. But if she's like a real fiery, you know, type of grandma, grandma, go scoot yourself to the behind me. Cut the person behind me.
Absolutely.
You to move,
And
child.
I mean, I
our
think I just-
responses, I heard someone, who was it?
I think I just go right back to intent. I mean, I really don't care if you're 5 years old, 100
Yeah.
years old, or 60 years old. It really doesn't matter to me. Like, it's just intent. You know, I just don't do well. And maybe this is definitely my upbringing. You know, I've been raised to be a strong woman, right? And I also been raised to respect my elders. But I think it's changed since I've become an adult. Not that it's okay to disrespect my elders, but the intent of entitlement,
Yeah.
I just don't do well with that. So
the mannerism on how you do it is the problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
that one
It's
is so broad. It's like, it's just the way, the demeanor, the manner, it's all of that plays a part on whether or not we let you slide heading in front of us. Like, I don't know.
If it's
Better
all the old
say
lady
that.
and she-
Y'all better say that, Christina. I swear to goodness, because she ain't your not today.
But everything you're talking about, and especially Christina, you're mentioning the intent. That's communication right there. Yes, it's culture. The way we react is culture, but the way we choose to behave is that communication piece. You know, on one hand, you look at the person who cut you off, and the way that they present themselves communicates something to you. All right, someone cut me off last week. I was in a grocery store, and you know what? It was Highland Park Market in Manchester, and I don't know if, or no, it was, excuse me, it was Glastonbury. I was in Glastonbury for some reason. And I went to Highland Park Market, which is like the fancy, really expensive, because I just needed something. And it was an old lady who cut me off, but I'm like, oh, well, you're entitled, right? Because I'm in Glastonbury and you just cut this whole line of people off. And so there was that piece and the way she was dressed that communicated something to me. Whereas, you know, if it was my grandmother who's 91 years old, I'm going to let it slide in other cases. So right there, the debate we're having about this, that's that shared piece. There's so much connection between what you're saying and the agreements that we're having back and forth, right? It's something that's learned. You've mentioned a few times you weren't raised right, who taught you to behave that way, and then the symbolic system of values. Are you entitled? Are you rude? Are you lost? Are you a child? And therefore, you know, it's okay that you've cut someone off. And that's that cultural piece right there in communication. The other thing is, and we'll get into this especially next week, a lot of it has to do with context. So culture is going to be a key word as we go through this class, and also context. It depends on the situation. It depends on what's going on. If you're already in a bad mood and someone steps in front of you and it's not, you know, this grandmother who's going to fall over any minute, yeah, you're going to react. Okay. If you're not in a bad mood, if you're kind of relaxed and you're not in a rush and someone does it, you're just gonna be like, ugh, whatever. You'll wave it off. And so that's a very key part too. Marzina, what were you gonna say?
You think you're slick, Professor. You think you real slick. You never told us what you did with the old lady. Don't act like you didn't knock the rope.
Oh.
What did you do?
What did I do? So here's
I was gonna ask the same question. Like, what was her reaction?
I'm like, I'm giving the whole side eye at her on the screen. Like,
No,
oh my
absolutely.
God.
You know what I did was it wasn't Highland Park. It was in Glastonbury. It's a Walgreens across from Highland Park.
I know exactly
And
what you're talking about.
my husband needed Gatorade because he caught that same Jerry's Donuts garbage. So I basically made a face at the cashier and said, really, you know, with my eyes through the mask. And she said, you know, the line's over there. And the old lady's like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And at that point, I'm like, it's okay. I'm not in a rush. Just go ahead. You know, I just lied, but
Wow.
I definitely gave her some serious side eye.
That was a what would Jesus do type of moment for you. I think that was your test for today, that day.
You know what? I felt like if the cashier didn't say anything, I think you would have like, excuse me, ma'am, like the line is over there. But the fact that the cashier
I was
addressed it.
surprised she did. I was surprised she did. Yeah.
I think that's why you
Mhm.
like her. Right?
You know, we're talking about intent and stuff like that, but honestly, even sometimes, see, I was on the other side. I'm the person who cut somebody off,
Yeah.
and I really didn't know. So I was on the Berlin Turnpike, and I was trying to go into Burger King, and the way Burger King is made is that the driveway, like there's a parking as soon as you go in, but because you go fast on Berlin Turnpike, you have to kind of just speed in, and there's a
Right.
truck right there on the first parking lot. I guess he was already reversing when I was coming in. So he had to like put on his brakes not to hit me.
Yeah.
So my only choice was to keep on going, like to continue to cut him off because unintentionally I already had done it. And
Yeah.
he flicked me off. Like, so I was in front of him and then I looked through my rearview mirror because I knew, I was like, oh man, I didn't want to do that. And he flicked me off. And then he went all the way around the entire Burger King to get in front of me just to flick me off again. And I was like, I didn't even, but I didn't do it on purpose. So it's almost like,
Yeah.
my intent wasn't to do it. But again, you're talking about mood. His mood was probably already messed up, and
Oh, sure.
that gave him a reaction. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
But honestly, Christina, at that point, like you said, it wasn't your intent. Like you didn't intend to do that. But at that point, because he did all of that nonsense to flip you off, then that just piss you off. Like, yeah, whatever. And I'm staying.
Yeah.
yeah, normally I would be
Like,
someone that if I did that, and it's so hypocritical, but if I had done that intentionally, he flicked me off, I would have flicked him off back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
If I did it intentionally, because I'd be like, you know what, whatever you're mad, I'm gonna, even though it was my fault, but because it wasn't intentional, like I wasn't in that headspace, so I was just like, I'm sorry, like what do you want me to do? Like I had to keep going. It's either that or you hit me. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to help us both out. Like
It's cultural too. I mean, you have to think about it. Okay, so yeah, you cut him off, but you have to consider his culture, where he's coming from. And in the heat of the moment, we don't do this at all. But if it was someone older,
he was like,
Was he
like
white?
70. He was white, long beard, long white beard. He looked
Oh,
like a
God.
rock star.
Oh, he was
okay,
miserable.
so there's a
miserable.
lot to unpack.
He had a
there,
pickup
right?
truck. I was just like, I'm about
This-
to get punched in the face by this man.
Yeah, this could be someone who has a sense of entitlement. This could be someone who has some racist beliefs. This is someone who could have some misogynistic beliefs. You've got all of those different pieces, which is part of his culture. And that's part of the reason why, especially people who are older, sometimes really struggle to learn and to adapt to change, because this is what it always was. And someone said this before, the kids today, they don't know what's going on. And we laugh, but that's exactly what people said about us. So it's all cultural. It's really interesting. But you can see where problems and where miscommunication between different cultures and different experiences cause problems. That's where it comes from.
I had this crazy miscommunication over the weekend, but
Yeah.
for me, I felt like the miscommunication was not on my part,
Mhm.
but the person that the miscommunication happened with,
Mhm.
you're in a higher position where that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give the example. I was in the hospital this weekend. And so me being in the hospital, I had minor surgery that needed to be done. And there was a lot of people involved. So I was sitting on my bed, thinking of the process, everything that I'm going through. And the surgeon walks in the room and says to me, I don't know why I'm here. And I'm laying in the bed and I'm looking at him like, okay, like, who are you? So I replied, I said to him, well, I know why I'm here. I had a stroke. I had certain things that needed to be done. At this point, the way you're coming into me, would you like to take a step back, go back out of the room? You're a surgeon, you're a neurosurgeon. Go find out from your team why you were called in.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, before I went off, like I gave him the opportunity to, because I understand it was Sunday, you may have been having a bad day. Like, I'm giving you the opportunity to go back out and come back and speak.
Mhm.
So this surgeon looked at me and says to me, well, it's not my problem to figure out what is wrong with you. So at that point, I looked at him and at that point, I looked at him and I said to him, okay, first of all, do you think it's professional the way you're coming in here and speaking to me? I don't know who you are. I'm a patient in here right now. Do you think it's professional? This man looked at me once again and said to me, what is unprofessional about the way that I'm speaking to you? So I looked at him, I said, okay, now I'm done. The same way you came into my room, you can kindly exit. And then as he was leaving, I don't know if it was the demeanor and I asked for people above him. He was like, oh, I'm down for whatever the team has in mind. And as he was leaving, I'm like, you're not touching me. I don't care what your team has in mind. At this point, there's nothing that you're gonna do on me. You know, and for me, I was shocked because he was Asian, probably a little bit of Asian American. And the way the disrespect was just like,
Did we lose her? Is she frozen? Looks like it. There we go, unmute myself. So what's interesting about that is there's a lot of things to consider with this story that she's telling us, in the sense that, you know, there's that whole culture of medical professionals who get really, like, they have no bedside manner, right? Or they're so overwrought with all the other responsibilities that they have that they lose that piece. So just a lot to unpack there. Yes, honey. Okay. Okay. In the interest of time, let's keep going. I hope we get Arlise back. Where are we? So I put up there as a question, how do you identify yourself? And that's something I want you to think about. In the interest of time, I'm not going to have you do the same activity that I was going to have you do. We'll come back to that later on. I am going to email this to you. This is a social identity wheel, and I encourage you in the next few days to take a look at this and to, please don't do that, yucky, and to think about, you know, who does, hold on, who does, how do you identify yourself? You know, race, ethnicity, gender, age, but then other things about you, you know, your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, and so forth. What? I'm teaching. I need to talk right now. This is what mommy does. And think about this, you know, I invite you to unmute yourselves now and tell me this, but when you think about who you are as a person, what part of your identity do you think people notice first about you? Like, what is the defining thing that people see first about you?
I think my spunky personality, like, it's funny because everyone thinks I'm like super confident, you know, like, or I'm just a people person. So just that alone.
What else?
Answer all of them?
No, not necessarily. I'm wondering what other ideas people have. I'll go there. I'll say it. I think for a lot of us, the first things that people notice about us is going to be ethnicity or race, and also gender. I think those are going to be the first things that people are going to notice about us in a lot of ways. And we do this ourselves. We're not immune, but we make snap judgments on people based on that. Christina was talking about Burger King, and I immediately asked, you know, who's the person that you cut off? Because in my mind, I thought, probably an older white guy.
I totally agree with you, Professor. I didn't think about that. I thought that you were like thinking, when I read it, I thought you were saying like when people meet you, like, you know, when they hear you, like, what is the first thing they notice? But yes, visual, when you first see someone or notice someone, it's the visual. You see them. So you automatically think about, okay, that's a Black woman. She's a really tall Black woman. She's a Black woman with locks. She might smoke weed. That's the first thing people think. So, and it's just like, or she's Jamaican, like, but no, I'm a Trini. So that's the first thing people think. Like, yeah.
So are we answering all these questions for the video we're doing?
Oh, no, I'm just looking for you to talk about it now.
Okay.
I think people also look for if you have like piercings and like tattoos and that stuff.
Oh, Amber, you just made me think about something, girl. So some people don't notice that I have a tongue ring. I've always had different tongue rings. I had like the little snake eyes for a long time. Then I went to the original one, right? So as a speaker, a motivational speaker, someone after all these years just noticed that I have a tongue ring. And they were like, they said to me, why do you have that? And I'm just like, for my own, I just like piercings in general. And so they're like, it comes off or it sends the message that you, oh, is the baby in the room? Okay. So I can say that you, or, and that's not the case. I'm sorry, Courtney. I had to see if the baby was in the back too. But that is, and I'm just like, clutch pearls. No, that's not the case. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for that. But let's remember too, these are snap impressions that we make of each other and that people make of us, but it's not the full picture. And that's kind of what I'm trying to circle back to here is it's not the full picture. Sure, people see me, they see white woman, short, right? But that's not all of me. Just as, seeing a woman of color with locks, really tall, that's not all of you either. Unfortunately, though, when we talk about communications, a lot of the interactions that we have, especially those short, informal ones, white guy, I've decided he's in a pickup truck for whatever reason.
He is. He is in a black pickup truck,
At Burger King.
F-150. It had chrome wheels. He was the typical, you are imagining, I promise you, because it was just like I was like, wow. I was like, this world is so mad that even Santa's mad. Like, this is some like that's how I took it. I was like, even Santa is pissed off. I was like, we're all going to hell because this is what's happening. I was like, everybody's so mad. What are you so mad about? Like, it was so crazy. I couldn't even believe it. Like I said, I'm a very vocal, direct person. So maybe even take it like that, I was just like, oh my God, what's wrong with you, buddy? Like, you really had a bad day today. Somebody done burnt the fries or something because he was mad.
And that's the key thing when we get into culture and identity is all of those pieces, all of those factors influence. Oops, sorry, I muted for a second. They influence so much. They influence how we interact with people. They influence, the way we behave. There's just so many different pieces there. And as we get deeper into communications, you'll be able to see that's where communication breaks down or it crashes and burn or, whatever happens. Hi, Arlise. I saw your text, but I wasn't able to.
My internet just went haywire.
I think I can unmute because she's in the
And
other room.
culture definitely changes between like age groups
Mm-hmm.
and between, like you said, ethnicities. Like for instance, when I got my first piercing, that I pierced the inside of my ear. My grandfather asked me if I was gonna do an audition to be a whore, because only whores wear earrings like that.
Wow.
And I was his favorite one. So for him to even come at me like that, I was like, but he had such a strong opinion on what it means to have piercings besides just your earlobe. Now I have my nose pierced, of course. My grandfather would die. I mean, I was in the hospital giving birth while I was pregnant with my son, where I was 19 weeks pregnant and I already was in labor. And they had put me in Trans-Zellenberg, which is upside down, to see if he can stay inside of me, right? And in that most traumatic situation, my grandfather comes to my hospital room and I had gotten a tattoo about a year prior on my ankle. And I was sleeping in my hospital bed and he takes he licks his fingers and he goes like this to my ankle, right? And I'm like, what are you, so I wake up and I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, the nurse must have put some ink on your ankle or something because your ankle's dirty. Like, I'm like, I'm like over here dying and you care about my ankle. He was like, yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
not cool. He's like, what have I told you about prostitution?
Yeah. Yeah. And these are all, I mean, these are great examples of culture and identity, what's important to you, what's important to him. I remember my grandfather died about 15 years ago, but he had this super fun habit of telling me that I'd gained weight or I looked fat. And it was like, wow, gee, thanks. But for him, that was so totally normal. You know, that was part of what was acceptable for his culture and for his background and his experience. Whereas, you know, I was in my 20s. I'm going, really? Thanks. So, all right. In the interest of time, I'm trying to push us along here. What does identity have to do with communication? Again, it's how you interact with other people. It's how you interact with other people, how you identify them, those snap judgments you make about them, all of those different pieces. And sometimes where we break down in communication the most is where we let our own culture and our own beliefs and our own identity dictate more than what we need to or what we should, you know, and sometimes that's that hard part of growing and learning and changing and accepting other people is the fact that we have this set way that we've always done things and we've always seen them. And communication happens a lot easier when we're able to embrace those things and able to be more open to other people.
What is in your identity as far as communicating says a lot about who you are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that Christina mentioned this incident at Burger King, and in my head, I immediately went to a certain type of person. All right. That says a lot about the type of person that she might have encountered, but it says a lot about me too, that I'm assuming it's a type of person. Same thing. Yeah. A couple keywords here. Schemata is one that you're going to see in the textbook. That is your mental framework. That is essentially all of your experiences and how they've crafted the way you react and you feel about things. So based upon your personal schemata, you're going to react differently to different situations and people. And it comes down to your experiences, you know? How do we develop our identity? And this is a key thing that you're definitely going to see a lot in the textbook and the assignments. 2 ways that we develop in our identity. We look inward. We are introspective and we think about how we feel. We think about how we react to things, our behavior. We think about, do we like this experience or not? And so we might develop our identity that way. But we also look outward. And I think especially in this new age where there's a lot more social media, this is going to be a really key one. But we look to external sources for feedback. Christina, you're telling us about your tattoo on your ankle. I'm thinking about my sister. So my sister is 30. She's her own person. Actually, she's 31 now, right? And she got a tattoo a couple years ago. And she didn't tell my parents about it for months and months and months. And it's nice, it's simple, it's discreet, but she was so afraid to tell them about it. And at that point, she was 27 years old. You know, it's okay, you're an adult, you can get a tattoo. But she was so concerned about that outward reaction, how my parents would feel about it, that she hid that part of identity, even though, you know, if you get a tattoo, that's something that's pretty important to you. She hid that part of her identity so much because of that outward reaction that she was anticipating. So that's where our identity comes from. We consciously choose it, we look inward, but then we also unconsciously think about what other people think about us. And we modify and change ourselves to that. I heard somebody, I don't know who it was.
I was gonna say it was the same experience because I had my eyebrow piercing. I've
Mhm.
always wanted to do it when I was younger, but my father always said to me, if I ever got it done, he would snatch it out and like literally rip it out and put like lemon and garlic so that way it would have a scar.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, and I grew up with that fear, and I love, as you can see, I got my eyebrow piercing.
Yep.
But I was so scared. And for me, I don't think it was the scared. I think it was also the respect that this was something that my father didn't want.
Right.
So at 25 years old, I'm like, okay, I'm an adult. I'm in my own home. I'm gonna get the piercing. Like I got
Yeah.
the piercing. Even after I got it, guys, like I don't think you understand. I didn't have locks. My hair was long. I had bangs covering my
Sure.
eyebrow piercing. The whole time, when my father finally found out, I was like, I'm a grown woman. He
Yeah.
saw it in my own home. And I had that fear, like, is he really gonna snatch this out of my freaking face? Like, I'm an adult. I'm in my own home. Like, yeah.
My
So-
sister, we were on the beach and it's on her upper thigh in the shape of Block Island, right? Really simple. And she showed it to me and she showed it to our other sister and she's like, what do you think? Is this okay? And we're like, that's fine. It's beautiful. You got it. You want it. Why should you be ashamed of it? But that's that outward identity development. And that brings me to this last phrase here, the looking glass self. Again, that's something that is going to come up when you look at the homework this week. And it's the idea that we look at other people's reactions as a way to mirror how we want to really express ourselves. So let me give you a really strong example of the looking glass self. Whoops, there we go. Social media. All right. Every single one of you has some form of social media. Even if you don't have like the big ones, you've got some sort of social media. We were talking about Snapchat earlier, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever kind of social media. It's almost inescapable at this point. Flipgrid is social media. So even if you don't have social media, sorry, I gave you social media. But the reality is we manage our identities a lot on social media. Let me ask you this. How many of you, when you do your Flipgrid videos, have recorded multiple times? I see all these hands going up,
well, I did it twice.
Yeah.
And afterward, I just figured, you know what? I'm content
Because
with
you
it
want to
the way it
look
is that
good.
the second time, and I just left it.
Yep.
I feel attacked.
Let me tell you what, I do a lot of video recordings and I only do them on days that I have a full face of makeup on.
Oh my God, my cousin is the same way because she's
Yeah.
a caseworker and she has Zoom meetings. She will not get on there if her face
You
is
got
not.
it.
I'm like, dude, you're
You
home.
got it.
Like, yeah. Oh God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Professor, why though?
Some of it is self-consciousness. Some of it is, quite honestly, when I was going on campus every single day, I would get up and get ready for school and put on makeup. And so in my mind, my coworkers have only seen me with makeup on. So
is this you
I look
without
the
makeup
same,
right now?
except maybe a little less eyeliner, but
This is you without makeup right now?
no, I'm wearing a full face now.
Well, it looks
got
like
the
a natural.
lipstick.
It's natural though.
No,
It
thank
looks
you.
very
That's
natural.
sweet.
Very natural. Yeah.
I did a lot of practicing. I did my makeup for my wedding a few years ago. So I did a lot of practicing online. But the reality is, like, that's identity management, and what we do on social media. You think about what you post on social media. Facebook is kind of the obvious one because it seems to be the most common right now, or Instagram. But what you share on these social medias is a very carefully crafted version of yourself, right? It's the same thing with like a politician. Okay, so Biden has a Facebook account, he has a Twitter account, he has, all of these different social medias, but it's not necessarily him at the other end of the computer screen. He's got a team of people who are carefully crafting what he posts and what he says. And that's kind of where, if you think about Trump, he was a little bit of a wild card because it was actually him on the other end of that social media. And if you think about the difference in their posts, I'm not trying to get too political here, but you think about the difference in their posts and how those two identities have been managed so differently. That's a key thing with communications, because you want to communicate something, right?
But one of them couldn't be managed though. Like,
one of them what?
Couldn't be managed. It couldn't.
I don't want to get political. I don't. But you see, there's a distinct difference between those two identities, right? All right.
He
So-
is who he is, in other words. That's what I'm trying to say. It could be-
that is very diplomatic. Ultimately, though, you know, we manage our identities. The stuff we put on Facebook and other social medias, the stuff that we see on Facebook and other social medias changes. And it has to do with, you know, what we think is normal, acceptable, what we like, what we dislike. You know, when you're scrolling through a social media and you see a post that you don't like, think about why you don't like it. You know, is it something that goes against your personal identity, your personal beliefs, your personal culture? When you see something that you do like, how does it relate to your personal identities and beliefs? All right. What happens though is social media changes the way we perceive others. And a big problem with social media in particular is the fact that people put out their best selves. They put out these perfect images of themselves, and it's not always accurate. I have a great friend. I love her dearly. The stuff she puts on social media makes her seem like she's got the most amazing life and she's traveling and she's doing these cool things and she's active and she's doing all this whole stuff. And the reality is she's not doing all that stuff. Her life isn't as perfect as she's putting it online, but that's what people want to communicate because we've decided that that has value. And so that's what happens with a lot of social media is it's very warped, if you will.
So it's not, so to jump in, Professor, like
Yeah, go for it.
there is the percentage who puts on that false truth, right?
Absolutely.
For social media. They do it for the likes, as they say, that's the saying, right? They do it for the likes, right? So I am new to Instagram. I was so not for Instagram until I started doing like my nonprofit and things like that. And everyone told me, you need IG, you need this. And I'm just like, no, I don't want Insta Snap and Instagram and whatever stuff is. So, you know, but I have it now, right? But then I've noticed that there are some people who, as we all know, use social media as their diaries that go on there and talk about their lives. And then that's a whole nother topic. But then there are people who are their real selves on there. There's a small percentage who are very honest. And those are the ones who don't get the most likes. Those are the ones who keep on their clothes and just show themselves reading a book because they just like to read. And they'll, you know, have a million friends but only get the 3 likes because their breast's not out and they don't have a, you know, they're a dick print. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's just, it's very pathetic and very disgusting. But yeah.
But those
well,
are your
you're
values.
absolutely right. My opinion. I think it's just it's
well,
tasteless
I agree with her opinions. I feel like the ones that are not comfortable with themselves are trying to portray why they're not, and then they get the likes. And the ones that are trying to, their thing is there for a reason, are getting shunned or whatever. And it's sad. It's like this person is not comfortable in himself, and they're getting all these likes, which makes you sometimes with IG you kind of wonder like who's viewing, like where their mindset is in a way, you know.
And that's the good friend I mentioned a few minutes ago. That is someone who, she does struggle with her identity. She does struggle with her self-worth. And I know because I've known this person for 15 years. That she's posting these things because of that.
And
know,
it's like,
and
no, sorry. Go ahead, finish, Professor.
I was just to say, like, because this is someone that I know and has been a best friend for so long, I kind of see that, but she's going for those likes. She's going for, you know, that social media, that influence. There you go, influencers.
And it totally sucks. It totally sucks because, like, for me, I'm the oldest of 7 guys, so remember that. So for me, my sisters are like, I have the sister, like when I say I'm the complete opposite, Courtney, I don't know if you look through my page yet and see my sisters, but they look like walking Barbies, no lie. Like, and that's them in real life. Like they look like Barbies. One of them just had her body done, and she is like a real life little tiny pint-sized Barbie. And like in real life, like, you know, they post all that stuff. I can honestly say, lives that life in her truth. Like that's her. She barely posts. She just does the typical photos. The other one, the youngest one, The body you see on social media is not the real body you will see when you see her. She's beautiful nonetheless, but she portrays this lifestyle that's absolutely ridiculous and unrealistic. So there's that, there's a majority, there's a minority, there's a small bunch. I don't know.
Yep.
It's just a bit much. Oh, thank you for my soup.
So
But
I've
yeah.
given you some stats here about social media, and social media studies have been conducted. It is hurting people. 60% report that it has impacted self-esteem negatively. 50% report that it has negative effects on their relationships. 80% report easier to be deceived by others through their sharing on social media. So social media, you know, it's this cool thing where we can connect and communicate with people. But especially as we think about identity, there are some consequences to it. So I do want you to consider that, especially, I'm going to go back a little bit, especially as this last line here, as we look at that looking glass self. All right, because that is going to be a key thing with certainly the video that you're looking at this week. The video, it's an awkward blind date is what it's called. It's between Cassie, who is a complete monster, and then a nice guy whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. All right.
It's just
But
some
ultimately,
people,
we craft these identities. This picture, or these pictures are really interesting. Any idea what you're looking at here?
people in their natural state, I think.
Yeah.
Say makeup free.
Yep. As I've got my full face on here. You've got Alicia Keys, you've got J-Lo, you've got Drew Barrymore, and my girl Chrissy Teigen at the bottom. And this is something that in the past few years, there's been this kind of drive towards makeup-free celebrities because things are so airbrushed and, you know, and crafted and unnatural and inauthentic. Think Kardashians, right? They're like the complete opposite of what is natural and what is normal. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you think about how they've made their money, how they've made their fame, it's all on social media. They've built these specific identities. All right. So it's really interesting to see how identity and social media play against each other. Other things, social media is pervasive. It's expected. Everyone is expected to have a presence on social media nowadays. And what that means is we are more susceptible to judgment. We're more susceptible to other people examining us and criticizing us and analyzing what we do. And what happens is people who are not careful about it, they put more value into that identity. And so their social media identity becomes more important than who they really are as a person, which is kind of a scary way to end up. And this is a gradual thing that happens. We don't realize it's happening. It's over time. That's where I give you the example of the frog in the pot of water. The frog is comfortable in the water and you turn up the heat and the water gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and the frog adjusts and becomes more comfortable. And then eventually the frog is boiled alive. That's the metaphor there. And social media and our dependence on social media to craft our identities really follows that same pattern. The last thing I have for you is a quick video. So I'm going to show this really quick so you can see it. And this has to do with how, let's see, share sound. There we go. This has to do with how your social media influences you. All right. I woke up like this. Good morning. I woke up like this. This is her picture. Bike ride done. organized, clear desk office motivation. Super healthy breakfast. Effortless selfie, right? Love spending quality time with these guys, but they're all back on their phones. Big night ahead. Now look at all the comments that come through. Now this is the same girl at the beginning and her partner. Oh, my man, relationship goals, Bay. All right, so I think a lot of what you saw there, I mean, you can see how one leads to another. One person sees one example of social media and you know, identity, and the next person sees, and it just kind of has this trickle down effect. Just something to think about. Did that look familiar to anyone? A little scary, huh? Yeah.
It's just sad. It's
It
just really
is.
sad.
It is. But people do that. And you know, as you read more into this stuff, you can see that there is an addiction behind it. And there is an impact on people's emotional health and well-being and anxiety and depression. Arlise, what do you want to say?
It's also not, which goes back to not being okay within yourself and your body, with who you are. You know, that you value, I don't know, like you value people's opinions to, you know, this world is crazy, and words can hurt. Like social media is hurtful if you let it consume your life.
Absolutely. I have to agree with her, because like, even I had to, going back to one of the slides where you said like social media kind of puts you in a place where you have to live up to the standard, right? For me, I like to dress, as my sisters say, homeless chic. I don't care. Okay. So they tell me I embarrass them. I don't care. So on social media, being that, you know, I'm doing certain things in the community, people who are like of, you know, higher stature, they have said to me, Marzina, you know, you're gonna have to dress a certain way when you come outside at this point, because people are looking at you. And I'm just like, so I can't wear my leggings with the rips on the side and my dirty boots, and no, I can't. So, and it's like, but that's not me. So again, I kind of change a little bit just for what is it called, stature, whatever, appearance. So.
And that's the hard part, is to some extent we want to be authentic, we want to be ourselves, but we also have to, you know, project a certain image, right? Which is why it's Thursday night, I'm at home, I put a dress on, it's not like I went anywhere, but I'm supposed to project a certain image. I put on a full face of makeup because I'm supposed to project that certain image, and we need to balance that really to survive. And there is a double standard, certainly for women, but it's this weird place where how we present ourselves, what we show the world communicates something.
I was gonna say that, like, you're trying to, whether it be trying to start a business, but you're trying to portray something about your business, and one of the things is being yourself, and you gotta not be yourself to portray that, like
That
that
part.
is the double standard.
That
Yes,
hypocritical.
that hypocritical, yes. Oh my God.
It's
Yeah.
true, because I was just told, Marzina, you're a walking billboard, like for your nonprofit. So you
Brand.
have to portray, they said how you dress. They said, how I speak and things like that. It kind of defends itself. It stands for itself. But they said how you dress, Marzina, is the first thing they see. So you have to, in order to get, and then they gave me the example, what if you meet a multi-billionaire, at a coffee shop, and you're dressed your homeless chic self, they're not going to take you serious, So I'm just like, but why? I'm very articulate. I don't think it's a problem.
You know,
and they're like, no, it's not. You're a Black woman, so you have a lot going against you right now. So you need to look like, but it's crazy, because the first thing they say is that, I don't know who's going to agree or disagree, but what I've heard, rumor has it, is that Black people spend a lot more money trying to look like something they're not while still living in a ghetto, while white people live more in the suburbs and they still have on their clothes from the Goodwill. And so that's what, they say. But we have to look a certain way in order to attract a certain type of people. But yet they say we spend so much. It's quite ridiculous and hypocritical.
Oh, it's bullshit.
Leave my homeless chic alone.
You're judged before they even hear you, like what comes out of your mouth. And that's the problem. It's like, if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna be me. You're not gonna. Don't judge me by the way that I look. Judge me by how I speak, how I carry myself. Don't judge the clothes. Don't make the person. Like,
look, just Google me at this point. Just Google
me. Yes,
and
find out who I am. Yes.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But unfortunately, that's just not how it works. And when we get into chapter 6 in particular in a couple of weeks, the nonverbal communication, I mean, we're really going to take a look then at how people make those snap decisions. And there's so many different ways that we communicate things to each other. And that goes back to, go back a week or two. Communication is omnipresent. It's constant. It's absolutely constant.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And it's like, you have to live in this world. And it's just, it's a messed up world.
Bitch.
It's a messed up world. Ugh.
I don't know. Damned if you do and you're damned
if you don't. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna cut us off there because it's 8:35 and I said 8:10 like way long ago. Let me just do one more thing with you, and then we're done. I just want to ask you a favor, and that is right here next week we are going to be talking about. You're still not going to work for me. Next week we're going to be talking about your motivations for the people you interact with and the things that doesn't want to work. Sorry. Oh, for Christ's sake. Excuse me. Excuse my mouth. Here's what I'm asking you to do. It says in groups of 2 to 3. Obviously, we can't do this. I'm just going to ask you at some point next week to do some people watching. All right? Go somewhere, whether it's out in the public, whether it's at home, wherever, and just watch people for like 10 minutes. Take a few notes, tell me what you see about them, why they're interacting, and so forth. But just do a little bit of people watching, because next week we'll come back and we'll look at it and we'll just break it down.
Just be nosy, y'all. Just be nosy. That's all.
Well, we're all pretty good at that.
Listen, I'm about to go to a funeral this weekend, and I'm about to see family that I haven't seen in years, that I don't want to see. And I just feel like I love my aunt. I love her to death. Like I can't not miss her funeral. But there's certain people I just don't want to interact with. I don't want to see. And I feel like there's going to be a blowout at a funeral because of the type of people that's going to be there.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your example right there. Christina, go ahead.
Are we submitting it or are we just jotting it down
Nope,
and
just,
presenting it?
just jot it down in your notes.
Okay.
Really simple, because we'll talk about it next week. We'll come back and talk about it next week. All right.
Alec, bring a burn book.
I said, I'm bringing my
wow.
headphones. I'm trying to bring my music. Oh my God. I'm dreading it, honestly, y'all. It's like,
Sure.
I can't miss her funeral because I love her. But at the same time, I'm just to a
Yep.
point where I don't want to hear the nonsense, pretty much.
I'll be in New Hampshire over the weekend, so I'll
Ugh.
do some good
Let's switch.
some good people watching there. All right, my friends, we're done. We're done. We went over. I appreciate you hanging in with me. I know it's a long time. I really appreciate the conversations. You really have some great insights, and I think it helps, give you a better sense of where we're going with communications. All right. So I'm gonna end this there. I've got things I'm gonna post. I've got a text asking for your opinions about the midterm, but other than that, we're good. I can stick around for a few minutes if you still need to chat.
I could send you an email. I'm gonna watch the video from class last